everybody. Welcome back to Stop.Sit.Surrogate with Kennedy and Ellen.
Hello.
We are welcomed today by an amazing guest. So would you like to introduce yourself and where you're from?
Sure. Ron Poole-Dayan. We live in New York, although we're about to move. My husband and I have children, 22 years old, from gestational surrogacy, and I'm the founder and executive director of Men Having Babies.
Oh my goodness.
22 years old. I did surrogacy. My triplets are 20. So you actually did surrogacy before I did surrogacy. Wow.
And at least gestational surrogacy wasn't that easy back then. So
It was
yeah,
not.
it wasn't that common. Yeah, correct.
You're the first person I've met that has a child that's over 20. Yeah, from surrogacy. Wow, that's amazing. Just one child?
The twins.
Twins.
Actually, over there are the
Aw.
twins that are three-ish.
A boy and a girl. And yeah, twins was and then triplets. They just put all the kinds of eggs in, didn't they? They just was like, just throw them in.
We had 4 embryos, 3-day embryos. The egg donor was my sister-in-law. There was no egg donation readily available back then,
Right.
and she was 36 when she donated. So it was, yeah. I think we transferred twice. So the first time 4, second time 5, something like that. Just
Oh
because
my.
success rates were not nearly as good as they are today, certainly not with an older egg donor and day 3 embryos, etc.
Right. Wow. Well, congrats. That's a pioneer right there. Seriously.
That's amazing.
All right.
We thought we were the last couple in New York that didn't have children then. So it just gives you a sense of the theory of relativity.
Yeah.
It's like, it's we saw Barbara Walters' interview about the gay 90s with a couple that had a child in Manhattan, and we're like saying, my gosh, everybody's doing it.
Exactly. That's the interview that my IPs that I had my triplets saw, and that's what they found out about surrogacy from watching the Barbara Walters special. That's so interesting.
Wow, that's really funny.
That's really cool. Okay, so just in a nutshell, what is Men Having Babies? What is it?
So currently, Men Having Babies is a established 10 plus years old organization that offers annually guidance to more than 2,000 intended parents around the world through conferences, many more through online resources, and has a financial assistance program that's also, almost 10 years old, and offers about $1 million worth of grants, pro bono services, and discounts annually for men who can't afford it otherwise, as well as engaging advocacy, which we can all elaborate on.
Right. I just want to go off on one little tangent. How do you get the funds for this grant program? Do you just have donors? Do you guys do fundraisers?
So when we created Men Having Babies, it was because we wanted to create some sort of financial assistance program. In fact, the program ran since 2005 at the LGBT Center in New York when our kids were 3.5 years old, and I was ready to go back to at least part-time work. I was home with them for more than 3 years. And then, so there was no program for people who wanted to become a biological parent, men who wanted to become biological parents. So there was a sort of void there. I mean, there were other programs, and I volunteered to create a workshop just for that. And that grew over the years to the point where we had an annual seminar, etc. And every year we would have agencies coming, and we would say, gosh, this is so expensive. What are we going to do about it? And they would say, we're about to create a foundation. We're about to create this. And at some point I realized that, everybody else, the audience was new, but I was there a year and I was hearing the same thing.
Yeah.
And the reality is that it wasn't supposed to come from them. It was supposed to come from us.
Okay.
So by then there were a bunch of other people who gone through the program, because I'm talking about 6-7 years by then, who already had kids and joined me. So I didn't have to, lead all these workshops on my own. And we got together and we said, let's create a financial assistance program. At that point, we parted from the LGBT Center because it was no longer part of their mission. But the original idea was pretty naive, and that was all these professionals who are coming to speak at our conferences, they make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And they, get really good exposure. By then we would have had, 60, 70 people in our conferences, in our seminars. I mean, today we're talking about well over 200 intended parents in each one of them. But at the time, we're saying, why don't we charge them to exhibit? And we'll give that money to people who can afford it.
Wow.
So that was the original, very naive, idea, in the sense that even today, when we're netting a lot more from sponsorships, it wouldn't go nearly as far. And that is why we also came up with the idea of the pro bono services. And later the discounts. It was kind of like, that way. But immediately when we started the program, we actually started the program by conducting a poll at the time between all the providers we knew. Okay. And we asked them, what do you think about if we started a program? And what do you think about what should be the income threshold? What should it be just domestic or international? Should it be for people who have children, or only people who don't, et cetera, age ranges? We wanted to get a buy-in from the industry before we started it, because we knew we were going to depend on them to some extent. And then later on, we said, how about if we also offered pro bono services? You can donate pro bono services.
Wow.
And that's what allows us now. So a typical, couple or single that gets full assistance from us, which is what we call stage 2, would get, typically not more than $20,000, if even.
Okay.
But they would get almost everything else for free, from IVF to agency services to certainly egg donation services, legal services, mental health services, and legal services both to them and to the surrogate and to the egg donor if needed, as well as escrow services, insurance review services, you name it. Now we even have Mead Johnson, and we have milk banks, and you name it. So by doing that, we could leverage the grant money several times fold. Had we not done that, we would have had to give financial assistance more than $100,000 per couple. We've gone very far.
That's genius. It really is.
Holy cow.
That really makes becoming parents affordable. If the couples, does it have to be a couple, or can it be a single male?
Definitely can be a single. Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a criteria that they have to meet that's probably long and drawn out. I don't want you to have to address all of that, but in order to fit that stage, I think you called it stage 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have stage 1, which is partial assistance, for which we have typically 250, 300 people a year who are eligible for, and they would get only discounts, but from providers, but they range, at the lower end, 15%, but many times 25 and even 50% sometimes.
That's a huge.
Our director on the website has literally a list of what those discounts and even who gives pro bono services, etc. So and those are on a rolling basis. They get approved all year long, and some of them apply for stage 2 and get the full assistance.
Amazing. That really is. That's really cool. I never knew anything like that existed.
Yeah.
It's amazing how it's evolved so much. So we touched on it a little bit. What clientele mainly do you cater to? Is it just gay males, or is it, because it's men having babies, so that in the title you're like, well, so who is it?
So first of all, our website clearly states that whoever is considering surrogacy is welcome to our events, regardless of background or orientation or whatever. And we do have some heterosexual couples suffering from medical infertility who come to our conferences. There was a time in the past that we opened it up in some instances, and we found that heterosexual people are escalated through the infertility treatment path, and they don't one day just say, oh, let me Google how I can have a baby, and therefore they don't usually are not comfortable, nor are they typically gravitating towards an event. They go to a doctor and they expect to get advice step by step. However, more importantly, we created Managing Babies to fill a void. As I mentioned, when we had our children, my husband and I, there was a group and even organizations that help people with adoption, with foster care, with co-parenting, and certainly separate ones for lesbians who were interested in doing IUI or etc. And there was just nothing for us.
Right.
We said that over the years, depending on where we have the conference, sometimes we also have adoption information, but we also don't want to, duplicate efforts. So in most places where we have conferences, there are strong organizations that provide assistance, both guidance as well as financial assistance for people who are interested in adoption. So we're just focusing on what we do, uniquely, as well as and our criteria for instance, the financial assistance program, etc., is that people should have a need, to do this. So it could be also trans people, and we do have trans people who come to our, who get financial assistance, have gotten financial assistance, either because they don't have a uterus or they transitioned, and now because of the way they transitioned, they shouldn't become pregnant. So that's our criteria. Criteria is that now, of course, if you're a lesbian couple or even a single, you have a uterus, and if you're not, and if you have medical infertility, then there are a lot of, and we can talk about it, there are a lot of assistance you get. That's the thing. We looked at the time, the fact that there's some insurance, now there's more available for medically infertile people. There are even more today foundations that help people that either had cancer or some other circumstances, and therefore cannot need surrogacy for a medical diagnosis. We wanted to fill the void to people that could not get a medical diagnosis, and that's what we're doing.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So you kind of take the rest of the issue and make it a little circle on your own. So everybody's kind of covered. Everybody kind of has a place that they could go to. Exactly. Now that you guys are filling that gap. That's fascinating. Yeah. It really is.
Are your events international as well?
Yeah.
So since I think 2015, we started a conference in Europe. Now we have two. So Brussels, which is very central in Western Europe, and now also Berlin. We more recently also, in 2018, started a conference in Taiwan. Now, our desire is not to have, an MHB empire where the sun never sets, That's not the idea. The idea is not to try to provide coverage to every single place.
Yeah.
Our goal is not to have more and more conferences over the years. Our goal is to make sure that we are available within reasonable, and about on a typical conference, at least 30% of the attendees fly in. Okay. On some of our conferences, it's 70% of the attendees who, fly or take a fast train in countries that have infrastructure. And the point, but the point though is that we try to go where we know that people are really in this, really distressed, since they don't have other sources. They don't have other help. So for instance, we have nothing in Canada because people there are a lot of resources and availabilities that are mostly suitable for domestic surrogacy. We don't have an event in the UK where there is domestic surrogacy. Mm-hmm. Throughout Europe and Asia, there are no, what we consider ethical and safe, surrogacy options. And also in much of these regions, there's also not available adoption. Sometimes it's because there's still discrimination, explicit or tacit or implicit, that they're not chosen, or not every organization helps gay men. But guess what? Most places it's because they don't put as many people in prison, and don't have as much teen pregnancy, so that there's not a lot of children to adopt.
Right.
So in Europe, the problem is really very acute, in the sense that there's also a lot of prejudice and misconceptions about surrogacy. In Asia, we wanted to go to Asia because we felt that there were the cultural and linguistic gap, as well as distance, made it such that there were a lot of untrustworthy intermediaries who were exploiting it. And we're creating a very, ethically, politically, socially fraught environment. And we were afraid it's going to blow up in everybody's faces before too long. And there were some instances of scandals around that. So that's kind of how we consider how to stretch our not so robust resources.
So how many people are in men having babies, not people that are interested in going through your age, like workers, like you guys.
Yeah, we just hired another person, so I need to count. I think it's about 11 or 10.
That's it.
But not half of them are not full time.
Okay.
So we have, a few part-time people that are involved. We're all over the place. We have employees from, LA to Seville, Spain, So we have board members, across the globe as well, including Israel. So it is a very much an international community and an international organization. Luckily, I mean, now everybody knows that, but we discovered it a long time ago. You could be a virtual organization and be pretty effective. So
Yeah.
we've been like that from day one.
Okay, so that was another question. Now you're all virtual. That's amazing. That really is. So how many you're saying annual conferences? Is it do you just offer one a year like in the States, one a year in Europe, or do you offer several?
So our oldest running conference is in New York.
Okay.
So that's our East Coast conference.
Okay.
We have a West Coast conference. We just had the 10th one there. So we've only been doing it about 9 years there. So that's in San Francisco. We have what we called MHB South. We'll see if we'll change the name in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. We're about to introduce most likely one in Atlanta.
Mm.
And we have one in Chicago that's been going on for a long time. So this roughly tracks big, LGBT population centers, but also segments of the community. So, for instance, there are more Asian Pacific gay people in San Francisco. More Hispanic in New York, or we used to have a conference in Texas, but now the Hispanic population is more likely to be in the Florida conference. Black gay people in Atlanta, etc. So we want to use a geographic coverage also to reach out to communities that are not necessarily geographic, but to make sure we don't have blind spots. You asked about our clientele before, and I made a mental note to mention that there is a lot of publicity and therefore misconceptions about who are the people who are benefiting from the help of surrogates. Mm-hmm. So it's very easy for people to feel that this is white privileged men, quite frankly, for several reasons. First of all, we know that the heterosexual people who are still the majority of people who are benefiting from surrogacy, they don't want to be visible. They want to go back to the community, and some of them are even using pregnancy pillows still. So there's a lot, they're definitely not visible, definitely don't feel that this is a defining experience. Just like nobody feels that, operation they had, to fix another medical condition defines them. In fact, it's good for them not to think that it defines them. Yeah. Whereas for us, not only is it an empowering, taking our fate in our own hand type of, issue, and it defines us, but also we can't be invisible. Right. So first of all, so it's not just that people feel sometimes that it's, that's why people feel it might be white gay men that are participating, benefiting from that. These are the people who can afford it. Yeah. Right. We have at our conferences people from all colors, all social demographic areas, backgrounds, because people come to us are the people who, as opposed to years ago, when gay people thought being gay means I don't have kids. Right. These are the people who see all the celebrities and who see, families created by gay men all around them, at least in the media. And now, all of a sudden, we created a situation where the mental anguish is much bigger because you no longer think it's part of your identity that you're not going to have children. You can have children. You just can't afford it. Right. And that's why we have a growing number of even younger people coming to our conferences and benefiting from our services. But, it's certainly not what people see in the media. Right. Exactly.
That's very encouraging to hear. Like,
Yeah.
super encouraging, because you're really the only, like, until Kennedy mentioned that there was a place called Men Having Babies. I never heard of you. Now, I'm older, so I'm not really, I just do the podcast with her and we talk about it. So, but she's more like, I'm being a surrogate, I'm doing this. So she has that information. But I was fascinated to hear about this. And now that you tell us, you help them financially if they need it. It's kind of the collecting place for all those people that maybe can't fit somewhere else. It's amazing to me. It really is. So do you follow in their journeys once they're pregnant, or do you just provide the services and allow them to kind of live their lives?
So first of all, we really don't want to be perceived or known as an organization that provides a service.
Okay.
Community organization, and we have a community, outreach person or community engagement person. We have a parent network, parent-peer advice network.
Okay.
So if you go to our website, you can go to a place where you can see many dozens, I think by now at least 200 families with their photos, and you can sort through them and find even people who are not just in your region and speak your language, but also people who had a miscarriage, people who, use the family member for an egg donation or surrogacy, etc. You can search through criteria and make contact with them to get peer advice.
Yeah.
So we're certainly not trying to have a centralized, service providing organization, but rather facilitate community peer support as well.
Okay.
We do, of course, provide guidance and provide people access to experts and access to the professionals they need.
Okay.
This balancing act requires us to make sure that we have mechanisms that guarantee that we're independent. So while I told you about how we generate most of our funds, that's not quite as true today as before. Let me just do a little segue. We have a membership program, so people pay or donate significant dues, and that's a big part of our revenues now. We do have fundraisers, and we have a lot of individuals who create their own fundraisers, from polar plunge to a marathon. This is the second year we're doing a marathon team here in New York, to Pride House and birthday, fundraisers for the children who were born.
Aww.
So going back to the question of, do we keep in touch with them? So first of all, we do provide, I'll start from the most, intense, and that is everybody that gets stage 2 financial assistance, they actually literally have a case manager or a journey manager.
Okay.
They'll have a case manager also at the agency that providing pro bono services. They also have a journey manager on our side that helps them, with basically orchestrating the entire journey, and certainly keeping in touch with them, etc. As far as everybody else, we also have resources and increasing, and this is part of our strategic goal for the next decade, having just celebrated our 10th anniversary, more resource for families. So what we've discovered is that our initial assumption always was that we're filling a gap, and that we can't create a local organization. I mean, we were originally local in New York because, once we go beyond New York, you can't really do both. So we will partner with organizations that are local. And we are still. But what we discovered is that our families, when they, graduate and they have a child, many of them want to have another child. So that's already reason enough for them to stay in touch. But they don't find the right support or the right environment for their families necessarily with those organizations we're partnering with. So for instance, if there's a terrific LGBT center in Chicago, the center on Halsted, they don't have much of a family program. And even if they do, you take your kids to a Halloween party and there are female parents and male parents, and the kid still sees, the same environment that they see at school.
Right.
So if one of the people's desires, and they tell us that it is, and I know from my own experience, is to sometimes normalize, our family structure by taking children to an environment where there are families like ours.
Right.
There are no occasions other than what or very few occasions or places where they can do that other than what we help organize or support local organizations. For instance, in San Francisco recently, we had a group called San Francisco Gay Dads. I hope I'm not mispronouncing their name. It might be Gay Days of San Francisco. And another group that came, Future Gay Dads, and we partner with them, and they come and they do a brunch or something alongside a conference. So we think it's part of our mission to help strengthen and partner with organizations that can support our families moving forward. Our families are interested in knowing how to speak to their children about their origins. So we have teen panels. Now we call it the perspectives panel, when we have people from different backgrounds. We even have children of surrogates who are on the panel, because we feel that it is very important for people going through the process to understand that the surrogates who are helping them are not doing it on their own or out of context. And part of what makes surrogacy ethical is to make sure that nobody's well-being is overlooked here.
Right.
So and those are the most fascinating testimonials we get from children of surrogates who, but so those are the kind of things, especially knowing, hearing from children from surrogacy, something that also parents are very much appreciating.
Yeah,
Now,
of course.
and this is before I even talk about advocacy, but we can talk about that if that's, I don't know if that's part of your agenda.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I feel like we're making you do all the talking, but this is fascinating.
I'm
Yeah.
just so just interested to
So
know
Ron,
everything.
how, just one little side shoot, how, you say you have about 11 employees, how are they getting paid? I know it's a weird question, but financially, is it from the memberships that come in? Is it number one, do people pay to come to your conferences? That's number one. Is there like a nominal fee that they pay to come?
It is nominal. It's always whatever we think is the right balance between making sure they don't frivolously, register and forget about it. So it's a little bit of a commitment fee, but not high enough such that they say, let me wait a day before to see if I'm really free,
Yeah.
Although the people, and actually I should say, given, so it's, it's like, something between $40 and $70, depends on the location. And the people, and subsequently the people who come are very, for the most part, are very invested. As I said, a lot of them are flying there.
Yes,
Right.
of course. So,
but going back to your general question, of course, all the funds we get go into one pot. So,
okay.
However, we do allocate a big chunk, more than a third of our funds to the financial assistance as well. Between the grants and I forgot to also mention that we have interest-free loans. And yeah, so for that there's like a $10,000 administration fee every year we have. So all those things, including incentives that we give to providers by discounting their sponsorships to come to provide financial assistance.
Right.
So all those things are a big chunk of our expenditure. Of course, overhead is another.
Yeah.
501c3 organization. So we're an open book. We're not going to be compensating people lavishly. And we have a board of directors who is free of industry people. Who only I mean, we do have one or two people that are professional in the field, but they're retired or or not benefiting from it. So and they're the ones who of course oversee pay and HR and all the things like that.
Understood. That's amazing. And all in 10 short little years, this is all kind of blossomed into this beautiful, I don't know, flower.
It looked pretty long in some respect.
Yeah, I guess for you,
I
right?
used to have a big head of hair before.
At your at these conferences, so people can expect to hear, because they're speakers, right? There are speakers at the conferences, so they can expect to get information from start to finish of all different types of like escrow and how IVF works. And do you guys give recommendations to places, or is it just the people who come, then obviously those speakers will recommend? Like,
absolutely never give recommendations.
Okay.
However, there are several conditions for people to participate, for providers to participate at conferences.
Okay.
So we have a very elaborate ethical framework for surrogacy that we developed shortly after we went to Europe for the first time, because guess what? Things are very different there. And if you want, I can elaborate a little bit in a bit. But the ethical framework includes our principles, which guide our advocacy, our legislative, engagement, etc., but also have what we call baseline protocols. And those are the conditions that every provider has to sign off on before they can be part of the conferences or a financial assistance program.
Okay.
So to begin with, they can't be at a conference without them having signed on, for, that they abide by that. And we occasionally, either because of something we come across or something that, people pay attention, our attention to, we sometimes realize that people are, might have committed to something that's not true, and then they're asked not to be in our conferences anymore.
Oh.
So it's not a very robust, threshold, which is why over the years we've been very much hoping that there will be. We understand there's not going to be federal regulation of surrogacy, but we were hoping there'll be some stronger industry self-regulation. And we've been in touch with an organization that gradually became the de facto trade association of agencies, which is SEEDS, the Society for Ethics in Egg Donation and Surrogacy.
Mm-hmm.
And very much encouraged, and even participating as an observer, because we're not part of the professional community, in their development of a much more elaborate set of standards, which they finally did about a year ago, and we have endorsed it.
Okay.
So moving forward in 2024 and onward, at least agencies will have to be abiding by the SEED standards, which include not just our kind of ethical, conditions that has to do with protection of, mostly the surrogates and other parties, but also with some really common sense business hygiene type of, best practices for the agencies, including how they should not be poaching, should not be, advertising frivolously, et cetera, et cetera. So we're very excited about that track.
Yeah.
Let me just mention, to complete the ethical framework, we also have a big section, the biggest section, which is best practices for IPs, for intended parents. Because we realize that a lot of what happens in the journey cannot be, dictated or governed by law or by even professional standards, but it's up to the parents themselves, the prospective parents themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So such as, as long as the surrogate is willing, try really to visit her at her own home so that her children, can see, where the baby's going to, which we know from research is a critical element to have the best adjustment for the children of surrogates.
Yeah.
That they know, the parents that are going to get this baby,
Mm-hmm.
and understand what's happening here. So things like that, including that we think that they should be subjecting themselves, which is not a mandatory requirement otherwise, to certain psychological screening and even criminal background check, which, as I said, is not universal necessarily. Not because we think anybody should give us a stamp of approval that we deserve to be parents, but because we think that the very unique relationship, at least during the journey with the surrogate and sometimes with the egg donor, is such that there are certain things have to be looked at to, not just make it a pleasant experience for everybody, but also to protect the surrogate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amen.
Yeah.
Hear that one. Mhm. Yep. It's happened to both of us. Yes. Sad.
Oh, no.
Say. Yeah. Right. Gosh.
Well, it's just that's the part of surrogacy that's not really talked about a lot.
It's not.
Everybody hopes for the best, and obviously everybody wants the best, but there are cases where it's not the as great as it could be or should be.
So I'll give you an example. We were in San Francisco a few years ago, I think just before COVID, actually, 2020. So it was literally January, before COVID
Right
started.
there. Yeah.
One of our biggest conferences ever. And we have now something called the Advocacy and Research Forum. And let me first mention that we have a person dedicated to research on our liaising with research on our team, a research associate, because we think that research should be encouraged and the research that already exists should be driving. We believe in evidence-based, rules and conduct. So, but this forum is meant because like conferences otherwise are really somebody even called them a boot camp. They're really like, this is what, it's kind of like one track for the most part. And like, this is, the basics and, this is how you get started. These are the questions you should ask. like gradually take them through and then deeper and deeper into the medical, budgeting, legal, psychological aspects. But so that's like happening, and that's other than improvements, that's always pretty much the same. But then we felt that we have so many professionals in the field that come to our conferences. Like for a conference, a typical conference with 250 intended parents, we'll have like 130, 150 professionals there. Okay. And there is no other place other than Seeds, which still doesn't have as many doctors or social workers, etc. There is no place where people that are part of this professional community, which is very unique. I mean, they make a lot of money for the most part, but they're also very driven. If somebody decides to do this, it's because almost always they have altruistic motivations as well. How about we talked about how to make things better, how to move the ball forward, because we felt that there's no other place that does that. ASRM is a terrific organization, but it's mostly the medical aspects. Resolve is a terrific organization. We partner with both of them on a lot of advocacy. Resolve is the Fertility Association, also a different focus. So I'll give you an example. One of the topics we're talking about in January 2020 was health insurance. Life insurance. And I'm getting goosebumps. It was just when one of the very well-known agencies over that weekend was, we found out that they're doing GoFundMe or whatever, some sort of crowdfunding campaign for a surrogate who died at birth. And those happen, these cases, and since they happen at least one more time. So very well-established agencies that didn't have adequate life insurance for the surrogates.
Oh my God.
And Seeds didn't even have that as their original draft. And then in part, I don't want to take full credit because there are a lot of people inside Seeds that also were advocating for that. They finally put in their drafts before it was finalized, also a clause that states that there should be life insurance and that it should be at the minimum. Their position right now, I think, is still kind of, embarrassing, $250,000. We think it should be $750,000 or more. So you see how real life, implications those ethical standards have, and why it makes so much sense for the people who are dealing with this to try to, evolve the practice the same way we're trying to evolve the ways we help intended parents.
All of my journeys, I had very large life insurance policies. I actually kept one. I still have it. Just because I was like, well, heck yeah, why not? So you don't think about it.
Advocacy, if you don't mind, just elaborating a little more. At some point, we realized several things. We realized that there are a lot of initially legal barriers and not financial barriers that nobody else is, or not enough entities out there are helping with. Okay, so as I mentioned, the fact that by now, even Michigan, I think, is going to change soon, and we'll be able to have legal compensated surrogacy there. There's really very real developments there.
That's a big deal.
But one point, it used to be that you couldn't do it in Washington, you couldn't do it, of course, in New York, you could do it, in other places. And now, as I said, we always knew that the fact that you can legally do it doesn't mean that you can't do it. You can afford it.
Right.
And we started looking at things that nobody even thought would be possible, such as that we will have insurance coverage for IVF. And and the fact that surrogates many times, their own insurance doesn't cover as you very well know, the maternity and delivery, and that newborns are not always covered. Because guess what? Many times newborns are born outside of network because the network is where the IPs are. And we have babies in NICUs, with ugly insurance fights, sometimes losing those fights, and therefore now everybody has to get subsequent additional insurance. Every time you add another insurance or something this to the pile, then
Money.
very few people can afford it.
Yeah.
So we realized if we try to create large coalitions that just nobody was there to organize before around these issues, we can help much more even, but in parallel to what we do with direct financial assistance. So I'll give you just one example. A year before New York passed their Child Parent Security Act, which is the surrogacy reform, which we have been very active on, the contents of it with Senator Brett Hoylman years ago when it wasn't even politically feasible, etc. And then lobbying, it was usually just professionals and our members who were in Albany lobbying for this, etc. We even, we're handing out leaflets at Christopher Street subway station in the Village against gay assembly members who were against the reform.
Wow.
But what we realized is a year earlier, they passed an IVF mandate in New York. And that IVF mandate was terrific insofar it covered female couples and singles, but not us. Okay. Now, some of it was just oversight. Some of it was because nobody even imagined that we should be eligible, and some of it was also because people just thought, and there were some other states that if they throw in a non-discrimination clause, that'll be enough. But all non-discrimination clause say is that if I had a uterus or some other medical condition that prevents me from becoming pregnant, I would be eligible for free IVF. But I don't have any medical diagnosis. So we got together in over a year and a half. We were working with Resolve and then later NCLR, the National Center of Lesbian Rights, that seems not directly involved, but they have a terrific legal team and are very, broadly involved in reproductive rights, etc. And we came up with a new definition of infertility that includes also what we call structural infertility or status. And also the model legislation also that was created thereby also includes a clause saying that you can't exclude insurance based on the fact that some of the treatment will be given to a third party. Because that was another problem we had in another place where they weren't, necessarily going to claim that we don't deserve it, but they're saying, we'll pay for your IVF. Yeah, we really, but the treatment had to go to a covered or a dependent.
Right.
So we created that, and Resolve did a terrific work. And as I mentioned, and then Illinois has that as a bill, as a law now.
Oh.
And possibly, and we're very actively working on a correction, an amendment to the IVF bill in New York, which we hope is going to come up next month to a vote, or at least to a committee. We have sponsors and everything else. And there are bills that either are meant to make IVF mandates inclusive, or introduce an IVF mandate that is inclusive in New Jersey, California, Minnesota, Washington, and possibly Connecticut at least.
That's awesome.
So it could be that within a year, and then many organizations are lining up and adjusting their definitions. We hope soon ASRM will have an announcement about changing their definition of infertility. We're engaged with them. We know it's going in a good direction. So this is an example of really pushing the envelope and trying to come up, because it's not just that the IVF mandates themselves are going to make a difference. It's also that there's a lot of coverage at work that is discretionary by large employers that are self-insured, that are not using the insurance companies that are subjected even to these mandates. Right. And there is a big movement already for them to attract employees and retain employees by providing extra benefits, including fertility preservation, for instance, and family building allowances. And the moment you have legislations who are all of a sudden introducing and then creating a momentum around a new understanding of what infertility is, then those private employers are also, we see that already, much more likely, Walmart recently, to Disney and many others, to also offer the same family building benefits to same-sex couples and singles.
Awesome.
That's amazing. Oh my
It is.
gosh.
Phenomenal. Really, to hear all that. Wow, do you ever sleep, Ron?
I know. You do so
seriously.
like you
Big team, get out of there. If I didn't sleep because of all that, I would have been terrible,
But
executive.
11 people doing all that work, it's like you've got your hands in everything. It's amazing. I love it. I
awesome.
really do. So, do you attend all of the conferences you personally, or do other team members lead them?
So far, I have been attending all of them, but and there's a core team that usually does. But if somebody has a kids graduation or whatever, then
Yeah.
we have some redundancy, so it's possible. And
Yeah.
some other employees don't usually ever attend, the conferences. But yeah, we have a nice team, but we have also a team of volunteers. This is,
Oh,
I'm not going to get too emotional. This is
oh,
really the best part of it. I mean, there are people who are just so thankful and so appreciative, and they're volunteers who fly with us from one place to the next because they're so appreciative and thankful about what we do. So it also makes a sense of community,
Yeah.
because it's hard when you are traveling circus like that, to create these kind of social connections, because most people are not traveling around like that. But yeah, there's there are people who help us with translations, with with promotion, with social media outreach. There's a lot of assistance you get from people, speakers. We have, just this morning, and over the last week, there are horrible things happening in New York right now, unfortunately. And we're like, approaching people from our network if they're willing to speak to the press or to legislators. This guy from Berlin just agreed to speak on a political discussion about surrogacy. Do we have time for me to just touch upon that? Because I think a
yes.
lot of Americans don't know
I
about
was
what's
totally
going
going to
on.
ask, what is it? Yeah.
So first of all, in the United States, it used to be that I, would tell people, as intended parents, let's think about the ethical aspects, and they would think that I'm about to lecture them that they should compensate surrogates even more. For the most part, because of our political culture and other things, people don't consider the fact that surrogates are compensated to be, a problem. In fact, as I said, it's something maybe should, the more the better.
Yeah.
That's not our position, by the way. We feel that surrogates are compensated, or what we like to use the term getting restitution or recompense, for the fact that what they're doing, the help that they provide us, is always altruistic, but which is why we don't like people say altruistic surrogacy in Canada. So what? Surrogates here are not altruistic?
No.
Are you kidding me?
Right.
Have you met any? But if you help an old lady with her bags, in the supermarket, then you have internal reward, and probably her thanks as well. But when you're stopping your life for 2 years and affecting the lives of your family, and go through physical discomfort. We don't like the pain and suffering term in the contracts.
No.
Because if you really have pain and suffering, you're not a good candidate.
Yeah.
But even the best, the person who has the best experience in giving birth, it's still very, very, much of a sacrifice as well. Let alone the medical risk.
Yeah.
So you're not just helping somebody with, carrying bags. You need to be made whole. And you're the only person who can decide what that means. What the monetary figure is. And it doesn't mean that the more the better. Okay. It doesn't mean that now when I see billboards here in New York, $90,000, no questions asked, that we're not reaching a point where it's going to be inducement levels, where it's going to be the levels where women who are not altruistically motivated, who are going to have this not just serve as restitution to the good deed they did, but something that's going to alter their lives so radically. To the point that it's going to be very similar to what we always felt in our guts is not so okay in India and Thailand and all those things. So if it becomes $150,000 in a few years, whatever, we were going to start feeling in our guts that something's wrong here.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's because we feel that there's not enough. The New York bill is the first one that uses our terms for disruption, discomfort, and risk as the rationale for the compensation.
Okay.
In some places it says services rendered. Are you service providers?
Wow.
I've seen that.
You know what I'm saying? So now, having said all that, in Europe there's huge sensitivity to the possible exploitation of women under these circumstances. And there's also a little bit of unfortunately, in the last few years of woke credits race, arm race, and so much so that the left-leaning, otherwise government in Spain right now, inside a terrific bill about reproductive rights and abortion rights, etc., that they felt compelled to strengthen, put a clause saying that surrogacy is violence against women, and that there should be that it should be totally criminally illegal to disseminate even information about it.
What?
And that it should be there should be an institutional education campaign, namely in schools, that now stigmatizes our families.
What?
There are people who are, the depressed there. So you wouldn't believe, you think that, so few people are, benefiting or helping people through surrogacy, such a niche issue, but we always knew that there was a lot of cultural fascination by it, movies, baby mama, but also a lot of political fascination in Europe. So Italy, from the right, the new Prime Minister Meloni has been viciously attacking gay men who are doing, surrogacy. In France, it used to be a big issue. It's not as big as before. There have been numerous proclamations so far, not beyond, by the European Parliament that surrogacy is violence against women. And there was, as the war started in Ukraine, they passed a proclamation about supporting women's rights, women's status in Ukraine, etc. And with the statement that also, because Ukraine was big with surrogacy, that surrogacy is violence against women. And a few paragraphs later, they said that there should be more research about surrogacy. And why don't you look at the existing research before you make such a blanket condemnations? But nobody even, thinks about it. They just go with it. It became so we have a huge problem in now. There was a former, luckily it would sound esoteric, a former Delaware Senate candidate, a Republican, that just a couple of weeks ago went all over the press in Texas, accusing guys from our community that had children through surrogacy, of child trafficking and and things like that.
Oh my God.
So, and they're suing her luckily for libel. But so there are all these things happening, and there's stigma associated with that. Our members in Europe are much more likely to be in the closet that they had children through surrogacy, that they're gay.
Yeah. Wow. Holy, that's sad. That just makes my heart
awful.
Yeah. So you find a lot of European coming to the States and maybe using your
they can't do it there.
Right.
Some of course are going to Mexico, Guatemala, other places. But I think from Europe, the majority are coming to the United States and Canada, which are currently the only two destinations from that standpoint that are represented at our conference in our program. We have an advisory committee, a legal committee that has been working for over a year now on more detailed guidelines. We have an article about it, but not detailed guidelines about what to consider when you consider other countries.
Okay.
What are the things you have to keep in mind? And we realize that some people, even, not even, I mean, not everybody's eligible for financial assistance. Some people will not have enough, resources to become parents in the United States ever.
Right.
And we want them at least to be very, very well aware what the problems are.
Yeah.
And we're going to come up with a system that has, for lack of better terms, like a red and orange and yellow, whatever, flags.
Right.
And things such as, even in the countries where there is regulations and, people are now thinking of surrogacy in Uganda, where you can literally be executed for being gay, let alone many other countries where there are laws against gay people. But there are other things, such as that people are not even aware of. Sometimes how do you feel about doing surrogacy in a country where there are no obstetric records that could be used to minimize the medical risk of surrogates? So in Guatemala, in Colombia, even if everything else would be found to be, adequate, that there's no intermediary that, makes, takes much of the compensation to themselves, that there's good, full consent and contracts in the right language and before, medical treatments. Some places have contracts signed after pregnancy is determined, because they're saying, what's the point of signing a contract if we don't even know she's going to be pregnant?
Wow.
You understand what we're talking about? But it's like, even places where there are no such problems,
My God.
if you can get the obstetric records of the surrogate,
Yeah.
then how do you feel about the medical risk she's undertaking?
Right. So she's technically not medically cleared obstetrically. She might be medically cleared with a clinic or what have you, where her heart's beating.
Very few countries have that. Very few countries outside of, I mean, the Western world, the advanced developed world, most of it doesn't have surrogacy.
Yeah.
And so people go to other countries, and there you can get obstetric records. So I'm saying, are there proxies? Are there really ways you can maybe absolutely, or whatever, try to, gauge that? Maybe, but I'm saying we want the intended parents to know that.
Ooh.
Wow.
Open my eyes, my Lord.
I know, you're like a wealth of information. I am learning so much.
So I know we're getting long here, but Ron, just to kind of put it in a little, I know you can't put it in a little bowl or whatever and serve it, but at your conferences, number one, are they like over a weekend or are they one day? That's question one.
Friday through Sunday.
Okay, so it's a weekend.
Yeah.
And then you're providing information, you're talking about topics, sometimes hard topics, and you're giving information, correct? And then these attendees take that information and either go their merry way, or they decide to kind of channel through you guys. That's the part it's not connecting for me.
So we don't facilitate, other than those
No facilitate.
to get the full
Okay.
system. We don't facilitate that. We
Okay.
empower them. And
Okay.
what we like to say, I mean, we have people who are coming, we literally ask them, what stage of process are you?
Yeah.
People are research only. People say they're a year or two before they think they'll commence, which is a really good idea to do, because you want to be able to plan ahead. And there are people who are, actively seeking or in process.
Okay.
So it's roughly, the research only are a very small minority. It's roughly a third of the other categories, year or two, about to commence or in process. And so we build this the conference such that it, fits everybody. So we have what we call peer advice. So our 3 people on our staff are surrogates.
I was going to ask that. Yes. Okay.
Yes. And the rest are mostly intended parents or a couple of intended parents and allies. So we have the peer advice that we give them, and we tell them, listen, this is not from the providers, this is coming from us. Sometimes we teach them what to ask the providers.
There you go.
Then we have what we call expert panels. People, of course, from the industry are speaking, but as experts. Or medical, egg donation, insurance, things like that. We're not, the experts. I mean, sometimes we know a lot of what they're going to say, but it doesn't mean that we're the expert.
Right.
And then we have opportunities for them to directly meet the providers.
Okay.
Because they need the professional help. And so they have little, like, minute and a half videos shown, so that they don't get a sense. They see it even before on the website. And then they can get to talk to them at a parenting fair, a resource fair. And then there are breakout sessions, which are basically like, group speed dating every 20
There
minutes
you go.
in place.
Cool.
And so by then you narrowed it down to, like, 6 or so people you want to talk to, or you're just in research phase and you're not doing it. You're doing something else.
Yeah.
We have a session by the way, for singles. We have almost 20% of people come to our singles, and maybe don't stay single. And then we have even opportunities for them to have private consultations if they're further. You can book in advance, or during the conference. So it's really designed to help people from various stages. Some people even, sign contracts at our conferences with providers. It's not us doing it.
Okay.
We just prepared that type of, environment.
Right.
You see people always comment about the fact that people never look at their phones, at our conferences. They're just so immersed.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. If you Google those things, it's so hard. It's like you get, first and foremost, a lot of, once again, commercial interest, which to them are well-meaning, but it's still not the editorial authority that you want to say, what do I even need to know? I don't know, give me the basics. People don't know that. And that's why those immersive opportunities. We have surrogate candidates who come to our conferences.
I was going to ask that as well.
I was going to ask,
Yeah, it's very useful for them. The only problem we have is that we want them to really keep it private. We don't want it to become, you understand, latch on and try to, grab them right there and then. But we absolutely encourage it. We tried a few years ago to do a track for surrogates, for surrogate candidates.
Yeah.
And it didn't work, mostly because for various reasons. One of them is the industry wanted to grab hold of it.
Right.
And the other one is that, once again, that's not what surrogate candidates expect to do when they're considering surrogacy.
Yeah. Gosh, my gosh.
Because we talked about like being a member, so member benefits. So in order to get all these benefits that you're talking about, do you have to be a member, or can you just
go to a conference?
We have two levels of resources that are available for you. So, for instance, you come to a conference, of course you don't have to be a member. There are handouts and guide documents that we give. They're available to the conference people, but once the conference is finished, it's done. If you want to see all this archive, you need to be a member. If you want to be part of the peer advice network, you have to be a member. So there's some things that we have a directory that we just relaunched called Surrogacy Advisor that has rating and reviews from 2,000 journeys already.
Oh my gosh.
And it was there for a long time, but we finally upgraded the technology. You can check it out. But also, as of a month or two from now, there'll also be cost comparison, which will be only for members.
Oh, amazing.
That's lovely. Yeah.
That'll be great.
I just really, literally, what is your background, Ron? Like, how did you, we probably should have asked that in the beginning, but this has been intriguing. Where?
Never in my life did I, until that evolved on me, did I imagine opportunities, So my background is business strategy.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Okay.
And when the kids were born, I decided to give up a very lucrative job to be home with them, because I just couldn't sit in the office.
Yeah.
When somebody else was, enjoying them. But then later I started on here, and then even when we created Managing Babies, I didn't think I'm going to be a full-time employee at some point. It just happened.
Yeah. Wow. There definitely was a need, still is a need, and even growing.
My son asked me, why am I doing it? I said, because nobody else is doing it.
Right. But you're doing it quite so well, like unbelievable. Like you're doing it so well. Like
huge advocate.
Amazing what you.
I was praising myself so far, but
good for you. We'll keep praising you.
Checking. I think everything I said is credible.
Oh my God.
If somebody wants to find out where like events are and get more information, where do they go?
menhavingbabies.org.
Okay.
.org. Awesome.
Perfect. Oh my gosh. Did
Let
we
me say one last thing.
Yeah. Yay.
We were always waiting because we have an advisory committee of surrogates. When we created our ethical framework, it was with an advisory, committee.
Okay.
One of them was a surrogate who's just been hired to be our advocacy director, associate first, maybe director later on. He's now a trans man, by the way. But we always seek the perspective of surrogates, as I mentioned before. And we're waiting for like an organization of surrogates, and there isn't one.
No.
And there is an organization called We Are Egg Donors, by the way. And what we think is that a lot of the surrogates and we see a lot of surrogates who are passionate about what they're doing and continue being engaged after they no longer able or want to carry more, they're being snatched by the industry.
Yeah.
So we think that's why there is an organization out there.
Mm-hmm.
We really lament that. We really feel that it would have been terrific and we would, when that happens, we'll be happy to partner with them. If there was, because I think a lot of you know better than me, there's a lot of this social media, kind of dynamics that I think could be very well served by somebody doing this consistently. And this is why I'm very happy about your podcast. Raise awareness.
Yeah,
to create, because people always have gut feelings about stuff, but until they need to articulate it like we had to with the ethical framework, etc., it's hard. So I think a lot of surrogates are asking themselves the question: is more the better?
Right.
There's low comp and other type of groups, but also we really think that it'd be amazing if there were more surrogates engaged in these kind of discussions. And we invite them, people who are interested, even if they are in the industry, to come to our advocacy and research forums. So whenever we have a conference like that, on the Friday afternoon, typically we have a session about social attitudes, about surrogacy and the ethics, etc., which is for all conference attendees, but it is also part of what we call the ARF, the Advocacy and Research Forum, which are free. And you can come to that. You can also come to the session about perspectives and personal stories and teen panel. So not the prescriptive ones about how to parent, but the ones that have more social and ethical implications. But then also you would then could be part of off-track discussions we have alongside the plenary session. We have like a room usually where we meet and we talk about all these things.
Okay.
So and we have like people from various associations, researchers, etc., that come to those. So we would really love more surrogates to come to these as well. So it's on our website under the Get Involved in Advocacy section, but also in our upcoming events section.
Well, you got 2 more that are going to come.
I would love to attend one of your conferences. Yeah. The closest one. Yeah. The San Francisco, and you just had that one, didn't you? You just had San Francisco. Yeah. What's your next one?
We're going to Berlin at the end of the month.
Can't make that one.
And then Chicago in June.
Oh, Chicago.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And we might have an egg donor flying there. We're trying to arrange the logistics. So if it was a surrogate organization, we would team up with you and help financially to, for them to come. And then after that, the fall is very busy. We have New York, Florida, Brussels, a month apart. So it's very.
Oh my gosh!
Wow, that's amazing, though. Oh my gosh!
I can't applaud you enough. You and Men Having Babies. It almost just seems like you were the person who was supposed to do this. I don't know. It's like.
As I said, I would not have done it if I didn't have really good partners on the board, on the team, volunteers, etc. So I think I tapped into something that just was there, and it was easier. I mean, it's easier to ride a wave than to create one. So
yes, exactly. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. We know you're super busy. We're so excited that you actually gave us the time. So thank you so very much.
Oh my gosh. And all the information. I'm gonna go back and listen to this like 8 times and like
go on the website.
Oh my gosh.
We're gonna try to get to one of them, Ron. We're gonna try to get to one of them.
Let me know. Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
I would be amiss to not say thank you, because
Oh,
doing what you've done, I mean, I don't think there's, anything compared to that. So
Yeah,
the thing
that's what
I've
we
done
thought.
is minuscule compared to what you've done and decided to do to help somebody else. And I think, I'm always, once again, I don't want to be in tears, but when I
Oh,
stop to really think about it, it just doesn't even make sense that people are willing to do this. So it's so amazing. Thank you.
oh. I wish I
well,
could
thank
still
you.
do it. I tell everybody that, but I'm too old. I aged out. Oh
Oh,
well.
you're doing what you can, in many.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. There we go. Thank you
Oh my
so very much.
Thank
You have a
you.
wonderful rest of your day.
You too.
Thanks so
Thank
much, Ron.
you.
Bye-bye. That's all.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we're going in June.
To Chicago?
Yeah, we're just gonna go. You know people there.
Do I?
Oh, I thought
Do
you
I?
did. Well, I
So-
thought you did.
So I'm gonna go on there. I really am. I'm gonna go on the website and see where the new ones are coming up. Like where and
Yeah.
maybe we can plan one.
A lot are East Coast.
Yeah,
I think
He
there
said
is
Florida. He said Chicago, Atlanta. I think they have one in Atlanta.
or they're gonna try and go Atlanta or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I
But
think
oh my gosh, thank you so much, Ron, from Men Having Babies. Like that is like
he
it's
just
like
hit
information overload.
he hit all my points. I have these little notes that
I know.
I kept going down the list going, well, he hit that, he hit that, he hit that. I'm like, well, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I was like entranced. I forgot we were on a Zoom call. I literally forgot because I was listening so much to what he had to say. And I was like, oh, you are spot on with that.
And how much he's advocating for
Oh,
so many
and the
different
legislation.
things.
Yeah. The legislation just blew me away that it's
Oh my
still
gosh.
on some books that it's, well, especially overseas, that you could be persecuted if you're gay.
Isn't
Are
that
you
insane?
kidding me? All right. Well,
but
that was lovely.
so okay, so menhavingbabies.org.
Org.
Perfect.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I'm
Well,
going.
then thank you so much again, Ron. And we're gonna go look up the
We are.
the surrogate advocacy.
Just even to be, it was
Oh, you wrote it down. You go, girl.
Yeah, getting involved in advocacy on the website. Yeah, I wrote it down.
Right.
Because even just being at one of those conferences, just to see what they have been able to create
Yeah.
a space for people like this. I mean, when I did surrogacy, and I know you're doing it like more in the here and now, but when I heard that from all of my intended parents, there's no place for us to go. That's why they all used that one agency.
Well, because that was the place to go.
Bet you dimes to dollars. That's where he had his twins. I will ask that if I ever meet him in person. Yep.
Yeah.
You're
probably right.
Yeah. So, which isn't a bad thing. It's just
you have to be right because he said he watched the Barbara Walters thing.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. But so there's these niches that people get, and that agency got into that niche in the beginning, which was phenomenal. So fast forward 20 years, or actually 10 years, because Men Having Babies has been in business for 10 years. He found a niche that needed to be addressed. And he said there should be a surrogate advocacy group. Was that a challenge for us?
I don't know, Ellen. I wasn't really looking at it that way, but of course you would see it that way.
Of course I would. Because there's not enough on our plates yet. No, I'm just kidding. No, I that's a great idea. It's a
fantastic idea. It really
is
because he's right. There are egg donations. There are places for the LGBTQ community.
You know who does
like where do surrogates go? He's so right. We're being eaten up by agencies.
Right. And I believe the Big Ask, because we've had them on here too.
Oh, they're huge advocates.
They do a lot, I believe, for surrogacies, and they have their Zoom calls once a week for intended parents and surrogacy. So they are doing that kind of already.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But I think what he was talking about was just kind of a nonprofit,
like just for surrogates. Like come here, you're a surrogate. This is the place.
We're not going to tell you what to do. We're just going to provide the information. We're just going to help to support your knowledge about it. That's a tricky thing. We won't go into it, but there's a fine line there. You have to be super careful.
To be fair, we're kind of
doing it now. No, that's why I think he that was really nice that he said, I like what you guys are doing, because
what a high praise.
Yeah, because I know we're reaching some people, but we're not reaching a ton.
No.
And I don't know how to get us up there to reach a ton. So I think interviews like this really helped both
They
of us.
help.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. Well, it just helps get the word out because it's
Yeah.
just that's what's hard is like there's already we have the niche. We have some people that are like, oh yeah, like this is really helpful. Like, and it's so nice to hear that every now and then being like, no, what you guys are doing is actually helpful. And it's like, oh, thank God we're not just talking to each other. Like,
Right. Well, we kind of are talking to each other, but we've always said that it's a conversation that needs to happen,
yeah.
but there wasn't a platform for it. And I think with the pandemic and then Zoom
Yeah.
became such a big thing, people are like, oh, and
we'll just do
you had
this.
this idea. And I'm like, well, heck, let's just try. So yeah.
Just do it.
Let's
All right.
just-
Well, oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Ron.
you, Ron.
This is a really long podcast, so
Yeah.
we're gonna wrap it up. But if you guys have any stories or you guys have any questions that you guys would like to share with us, please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at Stop.Sit.Surrogate.
It's been Stop, Sit, Surrogate with Kennedy and Ellen. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye, guys.